We're going to go ahead and get started. Today's panelist is Tom Hay. Tom serves as the Associate Stated Clerk in the Office of the General Assembly, and we're happy to have him with us today. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And I appreciate being here. It is 46 days and 20 minutes until the start of the 220th General Assembly, and I appreciate everybody who has been faithfully following along on these webinars, but those of you who've joined us today. One of the most important experiences for every commissioner and advisory delegate at a General Assembly is their work on committee. With this webinar, I want to explain who is in the room in these committees and what their roles are with the committee as you prepare for your experience at the General Assembly. At the front of every room, there will be a table of folks who offer the primary leadership to the committee. And at the center of that will be the committee moderator. Each committee has appointed by the preceding General Assembly moderator, a moderator and a vice moderator for each committee. Moderator's responsibility is to set the docket, to moderate the meeting when the committee is together, to make the report back at plenary when it is time for that report to occur. But one of the most important things they do, and part of your experience will be, they are also the folks who decide who else gets to speak to the committee, along with, in consultation with the committee itself. They are the place where so many people want to speak to the committee. They work through the moderator to do that. Now, as the previous General Assembly moderator makes the appointments for moderators and vice moderators for the committees, the standing rules give some very specific guidelines. At least half of the moderators and vice moderators will be ruling elders. And every committee that considers a major budget responsibility must have as its moderator a ruling elder. At least half of the moderators and vice moderators will be women. No more than one person from any particular presbytery can be chosen as a moderator or a vice moderator. There'll be some equality of synod representation, and the Committee on Representation is also involved as an advisor in this important selection process. Beside the moderator will be the vice moderator. The vice moderator's responsibilities are not as clearly outlined, but they work to assist the work of the moderator. They may be asked sometimes to moderate the meeting, to assist in presenting the recommendations to plenary. Often they're given responsibility to plan worship for the committee when it gets together. But we also look to them to be the eyes of the moderator and the parliamentarian to help count votes and to make sure that we carry on business most appropriately. Now, the moderator and vice moderator are both commissioners to that General Assembly, but with the major work that's responsible that each of these committees have before them, the stated clerk has been given the authority to appoint a certain number of volunteers to assist the moderator and vice moderator, the most important of which is the committee assistant. The committee assistant is a special angel who can provide all of the papers, the arrangements, whose job it is to give the moderator the kind of support and advice and help that they need, that they can be the best moderator possible. They also, they may address the committee, but not about the business before the committee, but address the committee for suggestions regarding procedure. A good committee assistant makes a big difference in a committee, and you'll find that we've got some great committee assistants, all volunteers, there to help us at this assembly. We've also found that committees function best when there is an outsider who sits as a parliamentarian. The parliamentarians are usually people who are there at the assembly for some other reason, for instance, stated clerks from some of the presbyteries. But they sit with the committees to offer parliamentary counsel to the moderator in the conduct of the business. But they also are a resource to the members of the committee who may want to ask them for advice and help in the best way for them to bring amendments or new business before the committee. Parliamentarians can be a good friend of making a committee work well. Now, as you look at this outline of a typical committee, you'll see that while everybody is facing toward that lead table, there's a huge number of people who are not present in this picture, because there are lots of people who will be in the committee room because they have an interest in the business before them, or they want to speak to the business that is before the committee, or they are somebody that the committee wants to hear from for their own advice. And it's very hard for a committee to know how best to use these resource people. So an additional volunteer at every committee sitting in the back is what we call a resource coordinator. The resource coordinator is there to be the funnel of information and of people to the moderator and therefore to the committee itself. They communicate with the moderator about requests to address the committee. They advise the moderator if there's anyone of special expertise that he or she thinks that the committee would benefit from hearing. And also they are able to search out and find those folks who can best give advice to the committee. Often they are a PCUSA staff member, but whoever they are, they're someone with a vast knowledge of the business before the committee and the kind of people who can speak to it. Now, these 5 people together we call the leadership team, and they will begin to gather together the first week of June here in Louisville to begin to go over the business that's a part of the committee, to create an agenda. They will send communications to all the members of the committee and begin to think through exactly the best process for the committee to do its work. This is the leadership team, the key to the support for the committee itself. But there are other people who help as well. And part of this reflects the fact that there are different sized committees. There are 20 committees at this General Assembly, more committees than we've ever had before. And we've used that as an opportunity to shape the size of the committee to the business they're facing. 9 of the committees will be 54 members or less. Those are the large committees, reflecting the size committees we've had in the past. They will deal with complex issues, but also dockets with a wide variety of reports and different items of business that come from different parts of the church. 5 of the committees, we call them medium-sized committees. They're 46 members or smaller. They will deal with smaller dockets and perhaps look at items that are less intricate, that the size of the committee will allow them to think those processes through and learn how each other speak to them together. Finally, 6 of the committees we're calling small committees. These really are small, 31 members or smaller. And some of them only have 1 or 2 items of business before them. And their size and the scope of the business before them allows them to take the 3 days that they're together as a committee and look carefully at that issue so that when they come back to plenary to make their recommendation, they can say, for instance, that we've spent all of this time carefully studying together the Heidelberg Catechism, and we bring it to you with our recommendation from our full attention and experience. But because different committees are different sizes, some of them will be staffed a little different from each other. For instance, up at that first table in front, we find that it's very helpful often for especially the large committees that are dealing with big reports and lots of information to be able to project the business before the committee up on the wall. Amendments to proposals, brand new overtures, and commissioners' resolutions can be posted up on the wall this way. And so we're bringing in people to these committees. We're calling transcriptionists recorders. Some of them are staff members of the PCUSA. Some of them are simply volunteers from Pittsburgh. But their primary responsibility is to enable the committee to do its work by seeing the work visually up on a screen, and then to also be responsible for recording the decisions of the committee in PC Biz. Back in the back at the table with the resource coordinator, most committees will also have a student assistant. Student assistants are volunteers from colleges and seminaries who are giving of their time because they have an interest in the assembly, or they think it would be a good a learning process as they prepare for ministry themselves. They are there completely at your beck and call. They are there to be help for computer issues when they arise as we deal with PC Biz. They will help the moderator in setting up the room and in making sure the papers are distributed. They will assist the resource coordinator in communicating to those who are outside the committee. They also will be free to leave the committee room if there's the need to find someone or to send some item of business someplace else. The student assistants, to have one in every room is a new move at this assembly, but one we think will help as we go forward. Now there's some other folks who are sitting with the committee. The first of those is a constitutional officer, and that would be a member of the advisory committee on the Constitution. The Book of Order says that when business that concerns an interpretation of the Constitution is brought to an assembly, it shall first go to an advisory committee on the Constitution elected by the assembly. These are 9 people, elders, teaching elders and ruling elders, and they have a chance to look this business over and to make a written recommendation to the assembly about how they see the impact of these overtures or these amendments. But they will, a representative of the ACC will be sitting in on every committee that might be dealing with issues of the Constitution. And they'll be there to continually give input about the issues concerning the Constitution that come before the committee. And this year we also have someone special in every committee. And this is organized by the Association of Executive Presbyters primarily. For they see it as a special ministry to ensure that prayer is lifted up as the assembly does its work. And they will be having present at every committee what they're calling a presence keeper, someone who's there not to address the committee or to bring special expertise, but someone there to continually lift up that committee and its work in prayer. They will also be stationed in the plenary hall when we have plenary meetings together. Mostly they're presbytery staff. You may never address them or speak to them. They may be called upon to pray by the moderator at the moderator's discretion. But the importance of the presence keeper is that we are not just a body of business, but a body of worship, and to keep a sense of our worshipful work as we seek to be faithful to the calling of Jesus Christ, to be the church, and to be God's people. This is an overview of the committee leadership roles. I hope it gives you a chance to think through your experience in committee. And I would welcome any questions that have come out of our conversation so far.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing this overview. And we are going to go ahead and take just a few questions. The first one is there's some questions about how people are assigned to the committees for this upcoming General
Assembly. That's a good question. It's one we get. It's a very common question. The theory of the committees is that they will represent the makeup of the assembly itself. We're not trying to create committees of expertise, but we want the committees are a reflection of the assembly as a whole, so that as they look business and consider the business, they will bring to the assembly something that reflects what the assembly would do itself. And for that reason, the assignments are made blind. They are made without any reference to a person's name or their expertise. There's a computer program that has been used to generate the committees. There's an obvious need to pick out, because we need to make sure that there's a an equal number of teaching elders and ruling elders. We try to spread out male and female, make sure that we represent our racial diversity, and that we spread the numbers of advisory delegates to the different committees. So there's some parameters to the random nature of the selection process, but it is truly done without any knowledge of a person's name or presbytery. These assignments go forward. So if you find yourself on a committee and you say, why in the world did I get chosen here? I think it's a moment to trust the Spirit.
All right, and the next question is around wanting to be able to speak to an item, something you have interest in speaking in that's not your committee. So what if you want to speak on an item of business that's being considered somewhere else in another committee that you're not assigned to? Can you do that?
Another good question. We certainly find that lots of people come to the assembly and find that they're assigned to the church polity committee, and they are very interested in an overture that their presbytery is sending up, for instance, that has been assigned to world missions or ecumenical relations. How can, if you were in your committee, how can you then speak to the other committee? Well, the first way and the best way is to sign up to address the other committee during the open hearings portion of that committee's meetings. You will be able to see in the weeks leading up to the assembly on PC Biz, each committee lists their agenda. And on their agenda, they list the times that they will be having open hearings for particular items of business. Ordinarily, it happens it's very early in the life of the committee. And so what you will do is you will sign up to address that other committee when it has its open hearings, and you will speak to your own committee moderator, let them know that you're having to slip out in order to do this, and then you will go over at the scheduled time, address the other committee, and then make your way back to your own committee. That's the best way for anybody to give some input in the discussion going on in another committee.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for sharing this overview with us today.